Hello, welcome. My name is Beata Leah. I'm an immigration attorney at Minsky, McCormick, and Halligan, and with me is also attorney Aaron Lowy. Again, we're immigration attorneys in Chicago, but we help clients come to the United States from all over the world. And we're here talking to you today about 6 things that you can do now in anticipation of the possibility of immigration reform. So before we get into that, we want to preface this by saying that while President Biden has announced a bill and sent a bill to Congress, there is, at the moment, no immigration reform. Nothing has passed, nothing has been voted on. And so it's really important that what we're talking about are things that you can do to prepare for the possibility of an immigration reform bill, things that would help an individual under almost any kind of immigration reform bill based on other immigration relief packages that have passed in the past, based on other benefits that have been available under many different administrations, just kind of common sense documentation and information that would be necessary. But we have no specifics about who may be eligible, if the law will pass, or when the law will pass. So we're not making any promises to anybody that there will be immigration reform and who will qualify. We're simply recommending individuals who are hopeful that they take certain steps to prepare for that possibility, things, again, that would be necessary under any immigration law. So without further ado, the number one thing that everyone hoping for immigration reform should do is collect the identity documents for themselves and the family members, their spouse or their children who might apply. Your birth certificate, your passport or your matricula, and other identity documents, because you want to establish in any application who you are. So if that means contacting the consulate or your relatives back in your home country to locate your birth certificate, that's what you need to do. You're going to want to get the original birth certificate for yourself, your children, and your spouse, if that's who needs to apply for immigration reform. Again, so number one, identity documents. What about number 2, Aaron?
So I think another very important thing is anything relating to criminal records. I can't imagine that a law will pass that won't be somewhat based on, someone's criminal background to see if they qualify. So, we recommend you getting court records, and you may need more than just the final record, but basically whatever you can get from court. You may even want to get police reports. We don't generally recommend just submitting all police reports, but it's good to have because your attorney may need to review the police report at some point. And one thing that I'll always remind people is that even if you got a case expunged, for immigration purposes, that still exists. So you actually may need to go to court, unseal your case, get the court record, and then if you want, you can reseal it. But you will want to have everything you can come up with in terms of court records. There is a way to do a background check through the FBI. You can send in your fingerprints. That is something that a lot of different attorneys can help you do, and that's something you could start doing in advance because that would give you your rap sheet, and then you would know every time you've been arrested by what police department. You can also get state, you can get like this a record from the state of Illinois with your fingerprints. So it's important to collect all the court documents relating to any of your arrests in advance, and that can take some time.
And we're talking about both records, criminal records, if you have any, in the United States, but also in your home country, if you have arrests in your home country.
Right. Good point.
The number 3 thing that you should do in advance of the possibility of immigration reform is maybe, not in all cases, do FOIAs. Those are Freedom of Information Act requests for a copy of your file or any information related to your history with any immigration agency with whom you may have had contact with in the past. So unfortunately, our government is not organized in a way where there's just one immigration agency. In fact, we on a regular basis deal with 6 different immigration agencies. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Customs and Border Protection, Executive Office of Immigration Review, and others. The point is that if you've ever had any kind of contact, especially a negative contact, but any kind of contact with an immigration agency because you've filed applications with an immigration agency, you've been apprehended at the border, you've been returned from an airport, you've had a deportation case against you. If any of that has occurred, you want to know what's in your file. It will be relevant. And even though our immigration system is, under all of these 6 different agencies, they do share information. So no matter what immigration reform bill, if there is one, passes, those agencies that are going to be involved in adjudicating an application are going to access the information from possible apprehensions at the border, possible incidents that occurred at the airport, copies of other applications that may have been filed for you years ago, even decades ago. They will have access, and your attorney or whoever you work with to file an application needs to understand your complete history to ensure that you're eligible. So, and again, that process is by doing FOIAs or Freedom of Information Act requests for those different agencies, depending on which kinds of contacts you may have had, in order to understand your complete immigration history. What else, Aaron?
So I think one thing to think about, this may seem simple, is your taxes. One of the proposals that Biden has mentioned is that you may be required to show that you've paid taxes. And so, you want to make sure that you have your tax return for every year that you filed your taxes. You can request your tax transcripts online through the IRS. You also want to make sure that you file them properly. It's not uncommon to see someone who perhaps they claimed a relative that didn't live with them, or they claimed to be single when they were married. There are a lot of ways that this may not be your fault, but you could have received bad advice. But you want to not only make sure you have your taxes, but make sure that they're done properly, because we don't know, but the law passed could require them to show that you've actually paid all your taxes or are in a payment plan. And so it may be that you're ready to file your application, and then you find out that you actually have to redo all of your taxes. So it may be a good idea to not just obtain your tax transcripts through the IRS, but perhaps review them with an accountant or an attorney to be able to make sure that they're done properly. And if anything needs to be fixed, you can do that in advance instead of waiting for the law to pass. And then, Beata, I know there were a couple other things. What's next on the list?
The last thing that you really want to think about is collecting evidence of the physical presence that you've had in the United States since you've lived here. So the proposal announced by Biden and various other immigration reform proposals in the past have always had as an element a required period of time that the individual has spent in the United States. So, for example, under Biden's proposal, the date was, I believe, January 1st, 2021, that the individual has to establish that they were physically present in the United States. Again, we don't know if this will pass, what the requirements would be, but you can safely assume that there will be some sort of requirement tied to how much time an individual has been living in the United States. It might be just going back to January of 2021, it might go back years into the past. And so for however much time an individual has lived here, it's wise to start saving some sort of indicia of evidence that they were here since they've come. And for individuals who came, for example, on an airplane using a visa, they will usually have a stamp in their passport with an I-94 record. And so that's easily established. But for individuals who are undocumented, who entered without inspection, they don't have that stamp in their passport to establish when they arrived. And so now you're looking at secondary evidence, medical records, religious records, school records, employment records, criminal records, interestingly, can establish that you were here if you were arrested or if you received a citation, even for just speeding. So you want to just think about, what can I show that I've been living in the United States since X date, and just start collecting that evidence should it be necessary, because again, in the past, immigration reform bills have typically had some sort of requirement that you establish physical presence here. So Aaron, any final thoughts on what individuals should know and do now as we wait to find out if this bill passes?
Yeah, just a few things in conclusion. So first, I realized that I failed to mention when I was talking about taxes that everyone has to pay taxes whether they are undocumented or not. Even if you don't have a social security number, you can request an ITIN called an individual taxpayer identification number. So even if you didn't know you were supposed to file taxes, if you were working, you likely were required to. And so you should, again, perhaps consult an accountant or an attorney to be sure that your taxes are in order. And just to jump back to my concluding thoughts, the first thing, and we can't stress this enough, is that no bill has passed. There is no application right now that you can file. We don't know if a bill passes, we don't know what it will look like. We don't know what the requirements will be. So again, there's nothing to do at the moment other than try to prepare the documents that we can anticipate will be needed. So the list that we gave you, again, just to run through it, your identity records, your criminal records, all your immigration documents, your taxes, your proof of physical presence in the United States. These are things that we think will be useful or perhaps required for any future application. But again, nothing has been passed. You should not be paying anyone right now. If anyone claims they can file an application for you based on the new law, that's simply not true. So be careful. Always go to a qualified attorney or an organization accredited by the Board of Immigration Appeals. Notaries or notarios are not attorneys. They're not qualified to give advice. Following the wrong advice could both result in you losing money, but could also impact your eligibility in the future for any benefits. So we just recommend that, don't jump the gun here. You can start gathering documents, but really please keep in mind, at the moment, there's nothing to apply for. We don't want anyone getting taken advantage of or losing out. So start working on getting these documents, get everything together so you're ready to go if something is filed. And I think we can at least be excited that this is, I'd say, the most sort of progressive or radical immigration bill in decades. So I'm hoping that at least something resembling this bill does wind up passing, and we'll obviously keep you updated if we hear anything, if anything does pass, and we'll keep everyone posted on what's going on.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank
if
you.
anyone has any questions or would like to schedule a call with one of us or any of our other attorneys, you can contact us at 212-427-6163 or by going to our website at www.mmhpc.com. Thank you.